Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something real simple. When was the last time you truly sat alone with yourself? No phone, no noise, no opinions, just you. Not the version of you people expect, not the version you show online, but the real you. Because the truth is, most people don't know who they are anymore. They've been so busy trying to impress the world, they forgot to build themselves. We live in a time where everybody is talking, everybody has something to say, everybody has an opinion about your life. But let me tell you something, just because people are loud doesn't mean they're right. And just because they're watching you doesn't mean they understand you. See, 2026 is not the year for noise. It's not the year for explaining yourself to people who never try to understand you. It's not the year for chasing validation from folks who couldn't even validate their own life. This is the year you go quiet and you go to work. Because silence is powerful. Silence is where focus is built. Silence is where discipline is born. When you stop announcing your plans, you start protecting your energy. When you stop arguing, you start growing. When you stop seeking attention, you start attracting respect. Some of you are tired not because you've done too much, but because you've been focused on the wrong things. You've been worried about who's watching, who's talking, who's judging. But let me tell you something, the people who are really winning in life, they're not talking about it, they're working on it. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. You don't need to prove anything to the world. You need to prove something to yourself. That you can stay focused when it gets hard. That you can stay disciplined when nobody is clapping. That you can stay silent when everything in you wants to respond. Because real growth, real success, it doesn't come from noise. It comes from focus. It comes from sacrifice. It comes from doing what needs to be done when nobody is watching. So today I'm not here to motivate you for a moment. I'm here to challenge you for a lifetime. To step into a new version of yourself. One that doesn't talk too much, doesn't explain too much, doesn't show too much, but builds everything. This is your time. Not to be loud, but to be legendary in silence. Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in your life where you have to make a decision. Not a small decision, not something temporary, but a life-shifting decision. A decision that says, I'm done playing small, I'm done explaining myself. I'm done being distracted. And that decision is simple. Focus on yourself and stay silent. Now that sounds easy, but it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do because the world is designed to distract you. Everywhere you look, something is pulling your attention away from your purpose. Social media, people's opinions, comparison, drama, noise. The more you entertain it, the more you drift and who you're supposed to become. See, focus is not just about working hard. Focus is about knowing what you want. Some of you are working hard, you're not focused. You're busy, but you're not productive. You're active, but you're not aware. And that's because your energy is distracted. You're trying to be everywhere, please everyone, respond to everything. But you can't build a powerful life in a distracted mind. You have to learn how to lock in. When you wake up, your voice should be louder than your doubt. Your purpose should be stronger than your distraction. Your discipline should be greater than your fear. Now let's talk about silence. Silence is different. People think silence is weakness. They think if you're not talking, you're not doing anything. But the truth is, silence is where the real work is. When you move in silence, you eliminate unnecessary resistance. You remove distractions and protect your vision. Because not everybody deserves to know what you're doing. Not everybody deserves access to attention. Some people will doubt you. Some people will laugh at you. Some people will try to discourage you. Sometimes it's not even intentional. Their mindset is limited, and if you listen to them too much, your life becomes limited too. So what do? You stay silent and you keep working. You don't argue. You don't explain. You don't prove them wrong with words. You prove them wrong with results. Because results don't talk, they show. Now let me tell you something about discipline. Motivation is temporary, it comes and goes. One day you feel like working, the next day you don't. But discipline shows up every single day, whether you feel like it or not. And if you want to win in 2026, you better stop relying on motivation. You better build discipline. Because discipline is what keeps you going when things get hard. There are going to be days where you don't feel like doing anything. Days where you're tired. Days where you feel like giving up. But those are the days that matter the most. That's where the separation happens. That's where average people quit and focused people keep going. Now let's talk about energy. Your energy is one of the most valuable things you have, and most people waste it. They waste it on arguments, negativity. people who don't support them, situations that don't serve them. But if you want to grow, you have to protect your energy. Not everybody deserves your time, not everybody deserves your attention, and not everybody deserves your response. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Walk away. Stay moving, because every time you engage in something that doesn't matter, you're taking energy away from something that does. Now, here's a big one: validation. Stop seeking validation. You don't need people to approve your dreams. You don't need people to understand your journey. You don't need applause to keep going, because if you depend on validation, you'll always be controlled by opinions, and opinions change. One day they'll support you, the next day they won't. One day they'll believe in you, the next day they'll doubt you. You wake up every day with good intentions. You tell yourself this is the day you're going to get serious. This is the day you stop playing around. But then life starts happening, notifications, messages, people needing your attention. And before you even realize it, your focus is gone. That's how it starts, not with failure, but with distraction. See, most people don't fail because they're not capable. They fail because they can't stay focused long enough to see results. They start something, then switch. They get excited, then lose interest. They chase one thing, then another. And in the end, they're left with nothing but unfinished dreams. And that hurts, because deep down, you know you're capable of more. You feel it, that voice inside you that says you were meant for something bigger. But every time you get close, something pulls you away. And sometimes that something is you. Your habits, your lack of discipline, you need to check everything. Your inability to sit still and just work. Focus is not natural anymore. It's something you have to fight for, because the world is designed to break it. Everything around you is built to steal your attention. The longer you stay distracted, the more comfortable you become with average. And once you get comfortable with average, it's hard to break out of it. That's why mastering your focus is not optional. You have to train your mind to stay locked in, even when everything around you is changing away. You have to learn how to say no to people that don't serve you. Not because they're bad, because they're not aligned with where you're trying to go. That's hard. Sometimes the things you have to say no to are things you enjoy. Things that make you feel good in the moment. Things everyone else is doing. You have to ask yourself the real question: do you want temporary pleasure or long-term success? Because you can't have both at the same time. Every time you feel distracted, it's easier to below your heart. Every time you lose focus, you're stepping further away from your goal. And the scary part is it doesn't feel like you're losing. It feels like that's what makes it dangerous. You don't notice the damage right away. Slowly, day by day, every opportunity is missing. Every decision. Until one day you look back and realize you're in the same place you were. Not feeling that regret of victory. So you have to make a decision, a real decision. Not just something you say when you're feeling cozy. Something you commit to when it gets hard. You decide that your goals matter more than your distractions. You decide that your future matters more than your comfort. You decide that your time is too valuable to keep wasting it. And once you make that decision, everything changes. You start moving differently. You stop giving your attention to everything. You become more intentional with your time. You protect your focus like it's something valuable, because it is. You start understanding that focus is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most and doing it consistently, even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it. Because that's where the growth is. Not in the moments where you feel inspired, but in the moments where you push through without it. That's when you start separating yourself. That's when you start becoming dangerous. People don't understand silence anymore. They think if you're not talking, you're losing. They think if you're not posting, you're not doing anything. They think if you're not explaining yourself, you must not have anything to prove. But the truth is, silence is where power lies. See, when you're always talking, always explaining, always reacting, you're giving away pieces of yourself, your energy, your direction. You're letting the world step into your space and shape your mindset. And slowly you lose control. You start adjusting your moves based on what people think. You start second-guessing your decisions. You start questioning yourself, not because you're wrong, because there's too much noise around you. That noise will drain you. Arguments, opinions, negativity, people projecting their fears onto you. It builds up. And the more you entertain it, the heavier it gets. That's why silence is not weakness. Silence is protection. It's you deciding that not everything deserves your attention. It's you understanding that your peace is more important than proving a point. It's you realizing that you don't have to respond to everything just because it's directed at you. And that's hard, because there's something inside you that wants to react, something that wants to defend yourself, something that wants to show people they're wrong. But every time you react, you step into their world. You waste time. You waste energy. You lose focus. And for what? To win an argument that doesn't change your life. Silence teaches you discipline. It teaches you how to hold your emotions instead of letting them control you. It teaches you how to walk away instead of getting pulled in. It teaches you how to stay focused on your path even when people try to distract you. Because not everybody deserves access to you. Not everybody deserves your response. And definitely not everybody deserves to know what you're building. Some people will smile in your face and doubt you behind your back. Some people will pretend to support you but secretly hope you fail. And if you tell them everything, if you show them your plans, you give them the opportunity to affect your mindset. That's why you move in silence. You keep your goals to yourself. You keep your progress private. You let people see results, not your process. Because when you protect your vision, you give it space to grow. There's something powerful about working in life. No pressure, no expectations, no outside influence. Just you and your commitment. There's that speed of needs to be done. You don't talk about it. You don't need a call. You don't need recognition. You don't need validation. While everybody else is pushing off to the road. While everybody else is also doing free. While everybody else is creating something new. That's the difference. Because when the results finally show, when the growth becomes visible, when the success becomes undeniable, you don't have to say anything. You're locked in. The same people who ignored you doubt your message will be the ones trying to understand how you push. But by then, it won't matter. Because you didn't do it. You did it in silence. Waiting to feel ready. Tell yourself, I'll start when I feel ready. I'll go all in when I have the energy. I'll be consistent when I'm in the right mood. In that moment, it doesn't come the way you think it will. Because motivation is consistent. Feelings change. One day you wake up excited, full of energy, ready to take over the world. The next day you feel tired, distracted, not in the mood to do anything. And if your life depends on how you feel, then your results will always be unstable. That's the trap. You've been taught to chase motivation, to wait for inspiration, to act when you feel like it. But real growth doesn't work like that. Real growth happens when you move even when you don't feel like moving. That's where discipline comes in. Discipline is not loud, it's not exciting, it's not something people celebrate every day. It's quiet, repetitive, sometimes boring, but it's powerful. Because discipline doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't care if you're tired, stressed, or distracted. It shows up anyway. It pushes you anyway. It keeps you going when everything inside you is telling you to stop. And that's what most people don't have. They have dreams, they have goals, they have ideas, but they don't have the discipline to stay consistent. So they start and then they stop. They try and then they quit. They promise themselves and then they break that promise. And every time they do that, something inside them weakens. Their confidence drops. Their belief in themselves fades. Because deep down they know they're not keeping their word. That hurts more than failure. Because it's not the world letting you down, it's you letting yourself down. Discipline fixes that. When you start doing what you said you would do, even when it's hard, something changes. You start trusting yourself again. You start building confidence not from what people say, but from what you prove to yourself every single day. It's not about doing something big. It's about doing the small things consistently. Waking up when you said you would. Putting in the work when you don't feel like it. Staying focused when your mind wants to wander. Choosing growth over comfort. Every single time you do that, you're building something inside you. Something strong. Something unshakable. And over time, that becomes your identity. You're no longer the person who waits. You're the person who acts. You're no longer the person who makes excuses. You're the person who finds a way. You're no longer controlled by your emotions. You control them. That's real power. Because life is not always going to be easy. There will be days when everything feels heavy. Days when nothing is going your way. Days when you question everything. And if you rely on motivation, you won't make it through those days. But if you have discipline, you will. You'll keep going. You'll keep building. You'll keep showing up. And while others are stopping, slowing down, or giving up, you'll be moving forward, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. That's how you separate yourself. Not by what you say, but by what you do when it's hard. You don't realize how much your energy is being drained until you finally step back and look at it. It's not always the big things, it's the small, constant leaks. The conversations that go nowhere, the arguments that don't matter, the people who only show up when they need something. And you keep giving. You give your attention, you give your emotions. And at the end of the day, you feel empty. Not because you did something meaningful, but because you gave too much of yourself to things that don't deserve you. That's the problem. You haven't learned how to protect your energy. You can talk to your head. It's fun. It's disconnected even when it's draining. And now it feels normal to feel tired all the time. But that's not normal. That's exhausting when you consider. Your energy is valuable. And once it's gone, you can't perform at your best. You can't focus. You can't work. Things are just good. So you have to start being intentional about their day. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not everything deserves your attention. Not everything deserves your focus. Some things are not meant to be. Some people not meant to be convinced. Some situations are not meant to be. You're giving yourself that the light of your feet. Because right now, comparing things to the better years to say, other people's opinions, other people's negativity, expectations, it's weighing you down. You wake up already tired. You try to focus, but you're not secure. Little things that don't even matter in the long run. That's why you have to start letting go. Let go of the need to respond to everything. Let go of the need to prove yourself. Let go of the need to fix people who don't want you. Because every time you hold on to something unnecessary, you lose energy that could have been used to build your life. And that's what hurts the most. Not the situation itself, but what it takes away from you, your time, your peace, your focus. You have to start setting boundaries, real boundaries. Not the kind you talk about, the kind you actually enforce. You stop answering messages that don't matter. You stop engaging in conversations that lead nowhere. You stop entertaining negativity even if it's coming from people you know. And that's not being rude, that's being responsible for your own life. Because if you don't protect your energy, nobody else will. People will keep taking as long as you keep giving. They'll keep pulling you into things that have nothing to do with your goals. They'll keep distracting you from your purpose. And if you're not careful, you'll look up one day and realize you've been living for everyone else but yourself. That's not the life you want. You want clarity. You want peace. You want progress. And all of that starts with protecting your energy. You start choosing what deserves your attention. You start choosing who deserves access to you. You start choosing what stays in your mind and what gets removed. And when you do that, everything changes. You feel lighter. You think clearer. You move with purpose. Because now your energy is aligned with your goals, not wasted on things that don't matter. You've been looking for approval your whole life, and you don't even realize it. Every decision, every move, every step you take, somewhere in the back of your mind, you're thinking about what people will say, how they'll react, whether they'll support you or question you. And that right there, that's what's holding you back. Because the moment you start living for validation, you stop living for yourself. You start adjusting your dreams to fit other people's expectations. You start shrinking your ideas so they sound acceptable. You start second-guessing everything because you're afraid of being judged. And slowly you lose yourself. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way, but piece by piece. Every time you don't speak up because you're afraid. Every time you don't try because you might fail in front of others. Every time you change your direction just to be accepted, it adds up. And one day you wake up and realize you're living a life that doesn't even feel like yours. That's the cost of seeking validation. It feels good in the moment when people approve of you, when they clap, when they agree, when they support you. It gives you a temporary high, a sense of belonging. But it doesn't last, because the same people who support you today can doubt you tomorrow. The same people who clap for you now can criticize you later. And if your confidence is built on their opinions, then it will rise and fall every time they change their mind. That's not stability, that's dependence. You become controlled by something you don't even own. And the worst part is you start losing trust in yourself. Because instead of listening to your own instincts, you wait for someone else to confirm what you already know. Instead of making decisions, you hesitate. You look around, you ask, you wait. And in that waiting, opportunities pass. Moments are lost. All because you need someone else to tell you it's working. And here's the truth you need to hear. Nobody is coming to validate your life. Nobody is going to fully understand what you're doing. Nobody is going to see it the way you see it. That's okay. It's not their job. You have to build a level of belief in yourself that doesn't depend on anyone, a level of confidence that doesn't depend on anyone, a mindset that says, even if nobody supports me, I'm still going. That's where real change comes from. When you stop needing people to agree with you to become different, you need to take risks. Do the fail. Do the try again without fear of judgment. Do the build something that actually matters to you. And it won't be easy at first, because you're used to that external feedback. You're used to looking at you. You're used to measuring your worth based on how people respond to you. So when you stop, it feels uncomfortable. It feels like you're doing something wrong. But you're not. You're finally taking control. You're finally deciding that your life is yours. That your path doesn't depend on you. That your dreams don't need approval. And once you fully accept that, everything changes. You see? You think differently. You stop asking and you start acting. Because now you don't need validation. You have something stronger. You have belief.